Hey, g'day mate. Welcome to episode 75 of the Exponential Performance Podcast. It is so good to have you here. Now, in this episode, Nick sits down with endurance runner Suzie White and has an interview with her. Now, we came across Susie. She's been a listener of the Exponential Performance Podcast, and she often posts on her Instagram account how she's listening to the podcast while studying for her nutrition degree, which is pretty cool. And we noticed on her Instagram that she'd been out and done a crazy challenge during lockdown, and it's called the David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge. And what it entails is running 4 miles. For those people that aren't in America where you use miles, it is 6.4 kilometers every 4 hours for 48 hours. And so she did this over lockdown, and we thought, that's awesome. Let's have a catch up with her and see what it was all about, see how she got on. Now, David Goggins, if you're not sure who he is a retired Navy SEAL and an ultra endurance athlete, and just general all-round like hard bastard. Absolute legend. He's got an amazing book out, if you haven't read it already, called Can't Hurt Me. He had a very abusive childhood and upbringing, put on a lot of weight and was sort of going nowhere in life, according to his words. Lost a lot of weight, became a Navy SEAL, went to Ranger School, did all this special operations stuff within the military, and then went on to run a lot of ultra marathons. And he always talks about callousing the mind, so building calluses on your mind so that you can push yourself through any tough situations. So here's a little bit of a glimpse at David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge. So let's just to give you a little bit of background about what Susie got up to. Check this out.
Every year I do this challenge where I run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I'm inviting you all to join me virtually. I'm going to be starting this Friday at 8 o'clock p.m. West Coast time. So, if you can't run 4 miles, walk. If you can't walk, ride your bike. Can't ride your bike, do some push-ups, some sit-ups, some calisthenics. It takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So to set aside that time every single 4 hours. So if I'm starting at 8 and I'm done at 9, we start again at 12. So 8, 12, 4, repeats the cycle. That's how it goes. So why am I doing it? Life's all about getting outside your comfort zone. Strengthening your mind, callousing your mind, arming your mind. You take this 48 hours and you can put this in your cookie jar. Your cookie jar is a reminder of how badass you are when times get hard in your life. Stay hard, join me virtually, 8 o'clock Friday.
So that was the challenge that Susie decided to step up to and take on, and we're going to jump in now to her interview with Nick around that. If you got any questions for Susie, fire them through and we will get them to her. She seems like a bit of an unassuming type of person that just quietly goes about what needs to be done and pushes herself, which I think's awesome. So here it is, Nick's interview with Suzie White. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Exponential Performance Podcast. Join sports scientist and performance coach Maddie Graham to find out how to train smarter and maximize your performance no matter who you are.
Hey guys, welcome to the Exponential Performance Podcast with a special interview with Suzie White. Hello Susie, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good. Although, as I was just explaining to you before we started, I have a slightly fresher looking hairstyle. So for those that are used to joining the podcast on YouTube, you'll notice that I have no hair on my head at the moment. I had a wee bit of a home hair cut yesterday that proved that my clippers only have one setting, which is very, very short. So that's okay, but it's worth a laugh if you want to go check it out on YouTube at the moment. But Susie, before we dive into why you're actually on the podcast, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do study-wise, work-wise, etc.?
Yep, so I'm a second year university student at Otago, and I'm studying human nutrition with a minor in sports nutrition, and I work part-time at a rest home, so that's quite busy at the moment. And sometimes I help out in the kitchen as well.
Nice. Yeah, I can imagine that working in a rest home at the moment amidst COVID-19 here in New Zealand is a bit of an interesting and probably tense time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. No, it's not the best place for COVID-19 to end up. So hopefully that your human nutrition practices will be helping out, especially in the kitchen area.
Yeah.
With those sort of things. But in terms of your study, so you're second year through nutrition?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So that's kind of gearing up to be a nutritionist, dietetic?
Well, I'm not quite sure what I want to do yet. I'm kind of wanting to go more like holistic nutrition, so, but I'm keeping my options open for dietetics, so.
Yeah, cool.
We'll just see what happens there.
It's a ever-changing field, and I think the field of dietitian or dietetics is kind of changing a little bit in that respect, isn't it? Where a lot more people are practicing nutrition at a non-dietetic level, and leaving the dietetic side of things for the more clinical-based processes. But certainly going back to Maddie and mine day at the nutrition school, it was a very clear pathway. You're either a nutrition student or you're a dietitian. But now I think there's a lot more opportunities to branch. And we've had a few guests on the past podcast that are kind of in that holistic nutrition space. So it could be quite an interesting area to end up in.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, and I know I did prompt you around this, but your views on nutrition before we start, what would you?
I'm vegan, and basically I've been vegan for about 5 or so years now. Mm-hmm. Originally I went vegan for, I don't want to say selfish, but more health reasons, because I thought it was better for my health. But now, doing more research about it, I think I'm vegan for like all the reasons, if that makes sense. Like I can see a lot more than just health now, which is quite, And a few years after I went vegan, my dad actually went vegan too, and that helped a lot. And now my mum's pretty much vegan as well, so it's much easier in the household now that I've moved back home.
Yes, it would be quite hard to be in a household with, I guess, them not eating veganism and you eating that way. Especially coming at it from, I guess, all beliefs and kind of paradigms around veganism. Okay, and that before you shifted to being a vegan, were you consuming normal diet, sort of standard diet?
I was a pescatarian, and then I was a vegetarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've kind of moved down the spectrum.
Yeah.
Nice. That's all good. And that probably leads us on to introducing your sporting background or what you do.
Yeah, so I pretty much played most sports growing up. My family's pretty active, so my parents always encouraged us to play everything. I actually used to play water polo for Otago for about 4 years, and I was quite into that. But then after high school, I kind of just stopped that and focused on my running. Yeah. Yeah,
and running's your main discipline now?
Yeah. I actually like getting into cycling quite a bit now. Yeah, I thought I might have a go at triathlons, but I'm not too keen on the swimming.
There's always multi-sport, and there's a few multi-sport listeners that are podcast with the kayaking, but for those, again, that are on YouTube, we'll be able to see a bike ground in the back. So it's kind of good that you did lead into that biking, and I know your dad's quite heavily in the cycling scene in Dunedin, isn't he?
He's just
inroad into it there.
Yeah.
But specifically, I guess with your running, you prefer sort of the longer distance events, really, don't you?
Yeah, it hasn't always been like that. I started on the track where most running starts, but I don't really have that much fast twitch fibers, I don't think. So I actually used to go to a running group when I was at high school, and we'd do reps, 1K reps around the big field at Logan Park. And it was quite funny because every rep everyone else would get slower and our coach would time our reps, and every rep he'd laugh at me because I'd have the same time every rep, like I wouldn't change, like, and that's kind of how I knew like I could run like long and keep up the same speed, like that's the kind of running I enjoy.
And that makes sense too if you enjoy that sort of, I guess, more endurance side of interval training, especially, that you're going to gravitate towards the sort of slightly longer events. And what would be the longest or the biggest race or event that you've done to date?
So I've done Tarawera 50k twice now.
Okay.
And I really enjoy that race.
You must enjoy it to go back to that part of the country from here, especially, which for the non-New Zealand listeners is one of the hardest places to get to, probably from Dunedin, is Rotorua. But so you went back twice. So did the year straight, like 2 years back to back?
Yeah.
Nice. How'd you go the second year following up?
Pretty good. I was pretty happy with my time because obviously the first time I did it, that was the first ultra I had done, at the longest I'd ever run. And it was interesting. Got quite bad stitch. Had to walk a lot of it, but the second year was very good. I ran pretty much all the way. Yeah, I was pretty happy with that.
Cool.
Effort.
Yeah. And so did you train differently for the second year, knowing what you're in for?
Yeah, I think I knew more what was coming. Yeah. I did a lot more hill work because it's quite a hilly course.
Yeah. And probably too, I think with endurance running, especially at a younger age, it is a lot harder for the younger athletes. But we're seeing more and more younger people getting into endurance running because it seems to be a trend. Instead of going to the marathon kind of stuff, people go to ultra distance. And so that can sometimes just play a part in training age, the amount of time that you've actually spent running and what your body can handle.
Yeah, there definitely wasn't many people my age on the start line there.
No, I can imagine it wasn't.
No one was looking at me like, what is she doing here? But I was like, I'm not as young as I look.
Yeah, and so you think that the endurance running is something, let's assume that COVID-19 hadn't happened in the world and events were going to happen. Did you have any more lined up this year?
I was going to do 3 peaks again this year, which is the Dunedin race. But yeah, and I wanted to do Naseby Ultra. Not sure if you heard about that one, and I think that's in August. And then I was also planning to train. I want to do the 102 at Tarawera in February, so I haven't told parents that yet, but
why not break it to them on a podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So get kind of leads into the reason you're on this podcast, I guess, which is recently you completed a challenge called the David Goggins Challenge, and it might have a slightly more technical name than that, which I'll let you introduce. So for those of you that haven't heard about David Goggins, I will give you a quick wee bio on him, and I'm reading this straight from Wikipedia. But he is an American ultra marathon runner, an ultra distance cyclist, a triathlete, a motivational speaker, and an author. He's a retired United States Navy SEAL and former United States Air Force Tactic Air Control Party member who served in the Iraq War. He is also known to be the world record holder for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours, and has a very interesting book out called Can't Hurt Me, which was released a few years back. But he is a pretty phenomenal kind of guy. He's done a lot, obviously serving in the Iraq War, but as a Navy SEAL. And in his book, Can't Hurt Me, he goes into a lot of detail about what they do in the Navy SEAL kind of training camps. And I forget the name of the Hell Week, I think it's called. And he's worth listening to. He's a bit of a hard sort of man to listen to, and he has a very much the attitude of harden up, which Maddie goes into quite a bit in the podcast sometimes. And I think Maddie has actually talked around David Goggins before. But the David Goggins challenge that we're talking about with Susie today, do you want to just give us an introduction as to what the David Goggins challenge was all about?
Yep, so first I came across it I'm part of a Facebook group called Plant-Based Endurance Athletes, and someone just posted the David Goggins challenge and said that they just completed it and said it was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, so I really wanted to try it out for myself. So it's called 4x4x48, and you run 4 miles, which is 6.4k, every 4 hours for 48 hours.
Okay, that's quite full on, really, for 48 hours.
76.8k over 48 hours. Yeah.
Yep. And does it have to be on every 4th hour, essentially? So you have to start on every 4 hours. You can't do one at 1 hour and one at sort of 7 hours and give yourself a big break in the middle.
No, I think he specifically said on the hour, like if it takes you an hour, you've got 3 hours to recover.
Yes. Yep. And so that's pretty interesting. And I think there'd be a lot of people, especially that aren't runners, that would look at that and be like, well, actually, 6k, let's call it. It's not too far. Most of us could probably walk 5k in an hour if we wanted to, if not 6k.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not so much the physical component of that, but the mental component of going back to back to back to back through the night, not much sleep, I imagine, if any, and then just that physical toll that it sort of takes on the body. So when you saw the challenge on the Facebook page, what made you instantly think, right, I want to try that?
Well, the week before, I decided every weekend of lockdown, I'm going to do the challenge.
Yep.
Because instead of like doing a race, I really wanted to challenge myself, just keep myself sane.
Mm-hmm.
So the first weekend I did a thing called Ultra Looney's Backyard Race, who Steve Tripp organised, and I think it did about 43k around my backyard, which is like 300, like not even 100 meters in a circle. So that was pretty mentally tough in itself. But then, this challenge, I thought I might as well do something else challenging like that. Yeah. Yes,
and I saw the backyard loony race, or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
And Steve Tripp, for most listeners probably haven't come across Steve Tripp, but they do run their own podcast from time to time called Crush the Cargill, and they're quite famous for running an event in Dunedin called Crush the Cargill, which is a multi-lap race up and down Mount Cargill, which is one of Dunedin's mountains or hills compared to some places around the world, and you go non-stop for 24 hours. But they're very famous at sort of putting their marketing all over the show. So if you haven't seen them, we'll give Steve a shout out and go follow Crush the Cargill on Facebook and see what they're all about. But it is, like I said, a very different challenge to running loops around your backyard. Because I guess at that stage you could have stopped, you could eat. This is a sort of a 6k on the 4 hour mark, and just keep going and going. So talk us through that sort of first couple of laps when you're out there, you're probably feeling quite fresh and ready to go, but that kind of mental component of thinking about how many laps you're going to be doing in those first couple.
Yeah, I think I realized the first couple felt good because I started at 4 p.m. on a Friday, so I'd worked out I'd finish at 12 on the Sunday, and the first couple I felt good. And then I think once I realised actually how long it was going to take, that was the hardest bit, like how I think I got to like 3 and I was like, oh my goodness, I've still got 9 to go. I mean, I should be thinking, but that's what happens in your mind, you start thinking about, I've got this much more to go. But definitely the night ones were the hardest. Yeah.
So started at 4 on a Friday. So you probably had 2, did you, in the light to start with? 2 or 3? No, 2?
No. Just
One.
just the 4 o'clock one, and then by 8 o'clock it was dark.
True. Yeah. Okay. So you went straight into some darkness.
Yeah.
And did you get to sleep that first night at all?
Maybe an hour and a bit.
Yep.
I tried to, as soon as I got back from the night ones, I tried to get back straight into bed, but your mind is like just racing, like as soon as you got back from a run, so it's really hard to fall back asleep after running.
It'd be interesting too. I mean, I know in some of those ultra races, especially up around the 100 plus Ks, people do tend to have a little bit of a sleep from time to time. They might take 15, 20 minutes. But I guess trying to get an hour or so, you're really entering into that deeper sleep pattern.
Yeah.
Your body's required to shut off, and then you're waking yourself back up. And, you know, most of us have probably at some point had a really restless sleep, or we've woken up in the middle of the night and not been able to get back to sleep. And you do feel pretty and groggy getting back up. So I imagine to get back up and go for another run and then come back would have been a bit hard on the system.
Yeah.
And so you got through the first night into the next day, and it started to get a bit lighter. Did that help with lifting your mood at all?
It actually did, yeah. The ones of the day felt good, like I was doing 450s, I think, which in the night I think I was doing like 520, 515s. Maybe that was because in the night I was running up and down my street, just because I'd seen a few cops out, and at the moment my parents were like, well, you don't really have a reason to be running up the main street of Moscow. So yeah, I don't think that would be a reason to be out. So
yeah, so
just keep it nice and close to home.
Yeah, so sort of change the course a little bit. So if you're doing on your street, did you have to do like a number of sort of laps on the street?
Yeah, I think the street we live on is like 300 meters long. So
okay, so you sort of add in another element of mental toughness by doing a significant number of laps on your street in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would have helped too. Then come the next day, you're right back to running a bit of a loop, sort of out and about, seeing some new places. So you'd have gone through another complete night on the Saturday night. Then how did the second night go?
I was fine, like mentally up until about 6 o'clock on the second night. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm only halfway. What am I doing, you know? I think I messaged my friends and I was like, I was making up all these excuses in my head, like I've got shin splints, like, you know, your mind starts playing tricks on you when you're thinking like that. But I think I'm like pretty tough. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to make sure I do it. Like I try to stick to my word. So yeah, I think once I started the 8 o'clock run, I knew I was going to finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as soon as, I think it's before you start going, like it's harder, but then as soon as you get out the door, you're like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah. It's like going for a bike ride or a run when it's wet, isn't it? You think, oh, you're sitting inside, you're not really wanting to go outside, it's cold, it's wet, and then you get outside and say, oh, actually, it's not that bad. It's just that process of getting started.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you said, from a mental point of view, it's one thing to think, right, okay, I'm you know, pretty tough, I can do what I say, but to physically go out and do it like you have, you know, you can really sort of lay claim to the fact that you do follow through with what you say you're going to do, especially on a repeat kind of process like this.
Yeah.
And it's, so I guess that last one, so the last one was at 12 o'clock or you finished at 12 o'clock? So your last one would have been at...
no, last one started at 12 o'clock.
Started at 12 on the Sunday. Yeah, cool. So how did that one feel?
That was pretty tough, yeah. I mean, it didn't feel as bad because I think I pumped myself up so much. Like I like to listen to music before I go. And like, I think my parents thought I'd gone a bit delusional because I was feeling pretty happy and they're like, what? But no, that was my goal for the last one was to stay under 5 minutes and get a 450s for the last one. So
yeah, that's pretty impressive to be that relatively consistent across the board with all those laps.
Yeah.
But I think it's natural to be elevated and sort of pumped on the last one, whether it be the last 5K of a 50K race or, the last lap of multiple laps through the night, because we know we're about to finish and we kind of get that heightened sense of achievement. But in terms of how your body held up, you said you got some shin splints along the way. I know you've had a few injuries in the past, but did the body hold up okay?
Yeah, it actually did. It was actually quite amazing. Like I thought I'd be a lot sorer than I was, and my mum actually, she's pretty good. She gave me a few rubs during the course of the 48 hours, so I was a bit lucky there.
Yeah.
And also have a spa, so that was quite nice to get in. But the weather actually was pretty good, so that made it like mentally easier as well. I think if it was like rainy and windy, it would be even tougher.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to repeat the challenge, I guess, on a very wet, wild sort of weekend in that respect. But okay, so your body held together relatively well, thanks to mum and the sparkle. Nutritional wise, how did you fuel yourself, or what did you use for recovery post runs? And
it's a bit of a tough one because I think I used to be quite I used to focus on like nutrition a bit too much, I think, and like the last 50K I just tried to like listen to my body, I think that works really well for me, like try not to focus too much on what I eat and just eat, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I guess mum made some cinnamon scrolls and ciabatta bread, and I was just trying to eat lots of carbs, I guess.
Yeah.
And few protein shakes and stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, it's interesting how, and I think a lot of athletes fall into this the mindset of, okay, I've got to focus so tightly on my nutrition. I've got to have every little nutritional pack broken down, set out, weighed, and etc. And it doesn't always work that way on the day, especially when you add in the stress of a race or a challenge like this. So to kind of be able to let go of that and just eat calories, essentially, was probably a good mental battle to win in itself, potentially for your racing going forward. Especially when you're going to get to a race like Tauranga and you go to an aid station and they might not have what you think they're going to have, or lost your race pack, or whatever it might be, so you've got to just eat something.
Yeah, I'm trying to like train my body to just like eat anything and run, because I deal quite bad with like stomach issues, so I'm trying to just, I think if I don't think about it, it's like a lot better, if you just eat and then think, oh yeah, just go.
Yeah.
It's much better, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of training yourself to eat is almost like training your stomach to eat just generally during a exercise session. And I think it was in one of the previous podcasts, Maddie and I were talking around that sort of training your gut. You can't just expect to go from running on not eating anything to all of a sudden eating pizza on a run. And it's going to be okay on the stomach. So that's a really cool win, I guess, too, from your challenge going forward.
Yeah.
So along the way, how did you document your challenge? Did you hashtag David Goggins? Did he reach out at all or anything like that?
Unfortunately he didn't, but that's all right. He's probably got a lot on his plate. I did actually document my process on my Instagram. And got quite a few comments about why the hell I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, I think it was quite good to document it because it keeps it for later on.
Exactly. And I guess that kind of poses the question, would you try it again, or will you try it again?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's It's a definitive answer, really.
Yeah, I want to do all those crazy races, so
Yeah.
gotta keep doing stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly from the training through the night and running through the night and getting up at strange times of the day and eating strange foods and so forth, it's whether you remove the mental aspect of the challenge you did, it's a really good training tool, I guess.
Yeah.
In some cases for endurance running and ultra running. But then just to have that mental ability to say, right, okay, I've been through a worse situation than what I am in this current race, and so forth. And that's where I think some of these challenges, and especially around what I've heard David Goggins talk about, is just, rationalizing, okay, I'm not going to die. I'm not in a war situation where people are firing at me all the time, or whatever the extreme case might be. It's just that kind of rationalization, and something that Maddie's talked about in the harden up side of things before.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot from it.
That's cool. So if people wanted to jump on to your Instagram to have a look at what you did, how would they track you down?
I think my username is Lydia_Susie_runs.
Okay, do you want to just maybe spell it out for people?
Oh, sorry. It's LIDIASUZIE_runs.
Cool. So yeah, people, you go check it out. Some interesting running adventures on there, and some interesting food challenges that your parents have been lumped into recently. As well.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully going forward that you get to do Tarawera in February next year. I guess anything's possible in the current climate around the world with COVID-19.
Yeah.
But is there any sort of parting comments around the challenge, if you'd like to throw it out to people to attempt the challenge?
Oh, definitely. I think everyone should do it, even if you just walk it. I think that would still be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or I think David Goggins even said you could bike it.
Yeah.
It's just about doing something different, pushing yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I think when I do we look into it. I think, like you said, just doing something different, and it doesn't matter what the mode of exercise is, running, walking, swimming, rowing machine, just the act of doing something every 4 hours through the night, disrupting your normal patterns, is something that everybody could really take some value in. And maybe we could take something from this and create a wee harden up challenge ourselves for people on the podcast going forward.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time, Susie.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I'm sure Exponential Performance will be following your performance going forward.
Mate, thanks for listening. If you would like to support this podcast and see it continue into the future, you can do so in a number of ways. Firstly, make sure you subscribe to this channel on whatever platform you are listening. Like and share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. If you're feeling really generous, head over and leave a review and a rating over on iTunes. This helps spread the word and develop the podcast. All of this will help the podcast continue long into the future, so we can keep bringing you the information you need to train hard, but most importantly, train smart.